All right, so I'm Sarah, and when people ask me what I do, and I say I'm a craftivist, I do activism through handicraft. The normal response is, oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, oh, that sounds lovely, I'll do that. And my response inside, hidden, deep underneath a smile, is pure frustration. Because I think craftivism can be so much more than fun. It can be much more fulfilling. It can change our worlds personally, and it can change our world politically and structurally. And by just seeing it as fun, I think could stop people thinking about how it could actually be more than fun and help our activism and be one of the many tools in the activism toolkit that we can use to improve our world. There's lots of forms of craftivism out there. If you Google it, I always think it's a bit like thinking about punk music. There's so many different punk bands out there, from the Ramones to the Sex Pistols to the Talking Heads to Blondie. All sound completely different if you Google craftivism. There's so many different approaches. My approach I call gentle protest. That's what I call it. And I don't mean gentle as in passive or weak. I'm talking about gentle as in compassionate, carefully done, with strategy, with consideration, with that compassion. And I think that's much harder to do, having that self-control and doing activism in a loving way than just doing it in a fun, maybe shallow, maybe aggressive way. I run the Craftivist Collective. These little labels that people sew on their craftivism kits says made with courage and care, which is a bit of a nudge to my craftivists to say, do this courageously, speak out, which is scary and uncomfortable, but do it carefully. Do it with a clear strategy, a clear objective, figure out who your targets are, who are you trying to engage, who has the power, who doesn't, who are the influencers, who do these power holders listen to. All of that stuff means that it's not always fun, but our motive shouldn't be fun. Our motive should be, how can we help make our world more beautiful, kind, and just for everyone? How can we help everyone fulfill their potential and help the planet fulfill its potential and eradicate these structures that oppress us and the planet itself? So my approach is that gentle protest. I'm not a crafter, never went to art school, I learned to craft from YouTube, so I'm pretty basic, but I am an activist, and I've been an activist since I was 3. That little child with a mullet. That's me. My mum used to cut my hair because we were on a budget. I'll never forgive her. This is me. This is me with my local community standing outside social housing for families on the top of our road where I grew up in West Everton, a very low income area. And you can see the banner behind it. And we squatted to save social housing that were going to be demolished to build a park that no one wanted. And if anyone knows low income areas, you know that to build a park just eradicates generations of families that are close-knit, and it makes an area much more unsafe. We won that campaign. So I grew up in an area with my dad as the local vicar, my mum as a nurse, then a full-time mum of 3 under the age of 5, living on the 14th floor of a tower block, which nearly made her had a mental breakdown on a budget as well. And grew up seeing where my community were campaigning on local, national and international issues, where we won, where we lost, and how important strategy was, but also how important love and humility and listening to people we disagree with and serving the cause and not just aiming for our own ways of having fun. And actually I think it can be bad taste sometimes if we're having fun when we're challenging structures that are making people suffer. I think it makes me a bit uncomfortable. There's 3 ways that I think craft, there's lots more, but I'm going to talk about 3 ways that I think craft can be more than fun. And the first one is that it can really help with critical thinking, which isn't always that fun, if we're honest. It means your brain hurts a little bit. And craft is really good because it's often repetitive actions that I use to get people to use that repetitive action to meditate, to calm their minds from being super angry, calm them down to being less foggy and more focused on what am I doing? Where can I use my power? Where's my influence? What can I do as an effective activist activist and using the process of craft, which is a very comforting thing to do when you feel completely disempowered in the messy world and think, what can little old me do? Every stitch shows that you're doing something. It's very empowering. It's good for mental health. It's good for burnt out activists. And it really gives you that comforting space to ask yourself uncomfortable questions. And my form of craftivism, I always have crafterthought questions with every different project, depending on what the project's for. It'll have questions like, what are your values and how do you thread them through what you do as a consumer, as a constituent, as a citizen? Pretty juicy, uncomfortable questions, but you've got the time and the process of doing that stitching to focus your mind and go, yeah, am I practicing what I'm preaching, or am I just telling other people to do it? Or if you're making something for a power holder, how can it engage them rather than it be all about you? Or if you're making something for the public, what do you want the public to do once they've seen your piece of craftivism? Is it going to empower them with a call to action, or is it going to overwhelm them where they go, I don't know what to do about this scary fact that you've just given me, or this is so vague I don't quite know what you're asking? So it's all about critical thinking for the process, and I think it's a wasted opportunity if we don't have those big juicy questions to meditate on our own or in a group. And group crafting is incredible because, as you can see here, you don't need eye contact with people, which is very different to an activism meeting where it's quite scary to disagree with someone with eye contact, or to have a silence where people reflect and don't just go, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Let's do it now, and leave. It creates a space for personal crafter thoughts, but also for difficult discussions with each other. You can listen to people you disagree with without looking at them, and without looking at them you can say, hang on a minute, tell me a bit more about why you've come to that decision. I'm not sure I agree. One of the quotes that I love in my book from a craftivist, and I didn't tell her to write it, don't worry, it's a real one, and she says, the first 10 minutes, I just felt frustrated at my terrible handiwork. I had to unpick my terrible stitching and start from scratch. But having to go back and start from scratch was the most important moment. It made me stop. It made me really stop and think about what I was doing. In other words, it allowed me to be a fuller me, as it didn't stop my critical thinking to function. If anything, it made my brain work better. It paced it, leaving space for even more connection. And so much of our activism is quick, transactional, quick responses. We need sometimes to do slow activism alongside it. For me, I talk about gentle protest as craftivism, and one of the hardest things, which it's so much more fun probably to crochet a voodoo doll of your favourite Prime Minister or President and send it to their office. It's fun. It would get more likes on Instagram. It would make you feel fun in the short term. But is it effective or is it harmful? It's not effective. You're just preaching to the converted. And it's harmful because all it is creating more division, which is not helpful for anyone, and creating more hate. So I get people to make gifts for people they disagree with. I get them to make gifts for board members, for politicians, for influential people, to say, make them a bespoke gift for them that they will cherish, but that will encourage them to do their job in the best way. And one example is that I was asked by Share Action, that does shareholder activism. Their CEO said that they'd been trying for 3 years to get the biggest retail company in the UK to be a living wage employer. She said for 3 years they tried everything and got nowhere. She'd read my little book and said, it's so weird, you've got 5 weeks before the AGM of the company, can you do something? So I thought, yeah, I'm not going to try and get every craftivist in the country or the world to do stuff and do a giant quilt and something big and brash. I'm going to ask 14 craftivists from across the UK that are loyal customers of their core base for this shop, because they're going to listen to their customers, not to people that don't look like their customers. And I'm going to give them a board member each, and I'm going to tell them to Google the fuck out of their board member and find out what colours they wear, what old jobs they used to have, are they a trustee of anywhere, what are their passions, are they shy, are they extrovert, are they flamboyant, are they timid. What is it about them? And can you make them a handkerchief bought from that company to show that we weren't boycotting them, we were customers? And stitch a message saying, don't blow it, use your power for good. You've got a difficult job, but a powerful job, and we want you to do the best job you can. And really make that hanky something that they'd like, not something that you'd like. You might like pink, but if they don't like pink, don't make it pink. Don't do capital letters and exclamation marks telling them what to do. Use it as an encouraging tool. And then write a handwritten letter to go alongside it saying, while I was making your gift for X amount of hours, I was thinking about how impressive it is that you've got this job, how much power you have, but also how much responsibility. And I was shocked that you don't pay the living wage. We love your staff. It makes sense to pay them the living wage, but it also makes business sense with staff retention, with lots of other reasons. So a very robust argument that was emotive, but intelligent. And we hand-delivered them in a very humble way, which again, isn't that fun? It would be much more fun to throw it in their faces and have a giggle. But we went, you have the power, we've made you these handkerchiefs, and here are some of the examples. And we had people who stitched flowers on for one board member who was a trustee of Kew Gardens, which is an amazing place in the UK. One loved music, so he had music notes all over his handkerchief. And within 10 months, we not only got the meeting that we asked for, we got many more meetings. We had lots of boring meetings with them. And within 10 months, they announced they were paying the living wage to 50,000 staff. And the chair of the board told me very quietly that the next year when we went back to the AGM to say thank you, not to say well done us, we went back to say well done board members, that was amazing, but we want you to be accredited living wage employers now, which is a little bit more difficult to get them to do. But the chair of the board told me very quietly afterwards that this campaign had more engagement than any other campaign that they'd ever seen. They constantly referred to their hankies when they met, even if the living wage wasn't on their agenda, and he really thanked us for that, which is quite incredible since they'd said no for 3 years to the living wage. So it's about that humble activism where it's strategic, it's about them, it's not about you, but that's much more fulfilling than quick fun. And the third one is craftivism can be really good to intrigue people. There's lots of other forms of activism out there, and in my work, I never try and compete with it. I try and complement other forms of activism and see craftivism as one jigsaw piece in the jigsaw puzzle and where we can help other campaigns or fill gaps where lots of activism tools aren't helping. So Fashion Revolution, for example, incredible NGO that work on improving the fashion industry, and they work online. And I thought, we should do some offline stuff. I love Fashion Revolution, but how do we engage people that love fashion, buy in cheap fast fashion stores? How do we engage them to intrigue them, not demonize them or tell them that they're not allowed to love fashion anymore, but how do we get them to think about who made their clothes? So I get people to shop drop mini fashion statements. So it's the opposite of shoplifting. You shop drop them. You shop drop them in unethical shops that you think could improve. You just go into a shop with a handful in your pocket and you drop them in shirt pockets, in bag pockets, and then when people find them, you can see on it, it says, please open me, all in lowercase with a smiley face and a kiss, so overly kitsch. It's got purple ribbon because purple is seen as a luxury colour for us in our culture and our behaviour, so it's seen as more luxurious than something cheap. It has embossed scissors on it, so the texture using 2 or more senses make us remember things more, so you want to touch it. And it doesn't say what it's about, so you as the public have to decide if you're going to open it. And if you decide to open it, you're more likely to have an open mind and an open heart than if something's forced in your face. And it'll say a message in it like, who made your clothes? Were they made with joy or were they made with pain? What values are threaded throughout this item? And then it has at FashRev at the bottom, so you've got more information if you want to decide to go and find out more info. And people make them and we shop drop them. And it's not about us, and it doesn't say Craftivist Collective on it anywhere, but as well as engaging the public, it means we had media all over the world last year during London Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week saying, are you going to find any of these in your pockets? So we got a message out there that was intriguing, that was positive, that made people curious, but hopefully also lingered in their minds, which was strategic and fun in some ways, but much more than fun. I think it could actually help fulfill us to be that change we want to see in the world. Thank you very much.